Welcome to Tao Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Lou Corletto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust. Pamelah Landers has been reading hands for more than 30 years. Using the science-based system of hand analysis, Pamelah is a leading expert in her field. Having read over 50,000 hands and published 15 books and printed in ebook format, as well as audios on the subject, she is the #1 international best-selling author of hand analysis products and one of the top 2 hand analysts in the world. One of Pamelah's unique contributions to decode hand markings into practical expression is applying mythology. Applying this skill, Pamelah supports companies, groups, and individuals to gain tangible clarity about their design, permission to express themselves based on their hand markings, and honoring the gifts provided through decoding that physical map that you carry with you all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming my next guest for the podcast episode today, Miss Pamelah Landers. I first met Pamelah, what was it, a month and a half, 2 months ago? 3D, it could have been last night or 6 months ago.
6 weeks. It was about 6 weeks.
6 weeks ago. We happened to be at a similar event by a good friend of ours. And, you know, when you walk in the room and all of a sudden there's just this instant gravitational pull between people, well, there it was. And lo and behold, in this instant bonding, there was this deep rapport of recognition from each other. Like there's something up here. And then throughout the rest of the weekend, we got together to unpack, and I got to sense of this woman's skills and abilities. Post that weekend, I have since been blessed by experiencing her work. And as you heard in the bio, she's one of the top 2 people in the world of hand analysis. And in some areas recognized as the top in the world, and definitely the most prolific in the sense of the writing and the teachings and the expression. So in a second, I'll shut up so Pamelah can show you and explain what this essence of hand analysis is. What I really liked in the sense of the rapport of our bodies of work, which is when I work with somebody, their whole life script, so this is why I don't need to talk to them. Everything past, present, and future is all in their system. And I've learned to read it, right? So it's in the physical body, it's in the emotional body, it's in the cellular body, it's in the energetic field. What we have experienced and what's possible is right there. So the more we get to read that, the guessing game goes away, right? Because there's a script or a map, if you will, the same terminology. And so Pam has this scientific aspect, and she brings this depth of intuition and the mythology, and it's just this incredible package to bring forth your map and script. So I'll be quiet. Welcome, Pamelah.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm just so excited to be sharing this with you and saying yes to the journey of me getting to look at your hands.
And that's why I appreciate you bringing this, especially for the listening audience, right? Because like me, I've sat down with all sorts of different folks who read hands, right? From literally gypsy based to across the border, mixed with tarot and all kinds, right? Some were spot on, some not so much. So I would love if you would share with the listening audience your magic.
Okay, thank you. So hand analysis, which I've been doing for almost 32 years, is a science-based form of palmistry. It's based on palmistry, right? Reading the hand, reading the map of the hand. But what makes it science-based is that there are structures and kind of rules, there are guidelines that get applied. So it's a teachable, learnable process, like palmistry, that you normally think of palmistry doing predictions and fortune telling, isn't necessarily learned in a program, right? You either have the skill or you don't. It's an intuitive thing, or you learn it, inherited from family members often in some countries. So this is like I had to go to school in order to learn how to read hands. It's actually a teachable program. Here's the foundation. Your body is your soul map. Everybody's body is their individual soul map, which is why no two people look the same, even identical twins. Their parents can tell them apart, or family members, right? And they have different lines in their hand and different fingerprint patterns, because I've actually read for some identical twins. So every person has their own map. And that map shows up all over your body. And every chart that you would have read, astrology, human design, numerology, Enneagram, right? Any of those personality quote typing systems, there are business systems that do this. Well, I'm going to say basically the same thing and maybe a different language or bring in different perspectives, but you're the same person. So regardless of the map, the information should map over. If you have a bad reader, that's not going to happen. Right. So my experience is that every part of the body has the same information depending on how it gets read. And I read the hands. It's a microcosm of the soul, and the whole pattern of who you are is here. It's in your face, it's in your eyes. It's, people read there was a guy who in my first year of classes who was a face reader, and he wanted to take the hands class to see what the correlation was. And there was a lot of crossover, of course. So that's foundational. It doesn't matter, who's reading you and what the map is. It just matters that they're good at it. And right. I'm really good at it.
Right. Yeah. So a quick interruption while you're laughing there. That's the beauty. So listening audience, right? A map is a map, right? It gets us, it creates a clear foundation of structure and distance. And yet there's people who have read maps and got lost, right? Like they're going from LA to Denver and they got lost. Versus if you read the map, you'll get from wherever you're going, right? Wherever you start to where you're going. And so the reader does matter, right?
A whole lot.
Yeah, a whole lot for sure. So, yeah. And Pam's one of the best in the world. That's why she's on the call today.
Right. So my experience is, because I've read so many hands, and I learned this in the process of looking at thousands of hands, is I can immediately see a pattern. It takes me, like you, when we first met, you were saying, oh yeah, 2 or 3 minutes, I can read the whole energy of the body. Well, that's what it takes for me to read somebody's map on their hands. It takes longer to talk about it, but I can read the process. I can read it. I can read the pattern. I can see a lot in 2 to 3 minutes, and then begins the communication. So I'm gifted with a specific marking in my hand to be able to translate this foreign consciousness of hand analysis, this abstract consciousness, into a language that makes sense to people, which is one of the reasons that I'm so good at what I do. I use a lot of stories and examples to make it real. So yeah, it's a dialogue when I'm reading. It's not not
a monologue.
It's not a monologue.
Right.
So Lou has agreed that I can talk about his hand. So the first thing that I saw when I looked at Lou's hands is a pattern about love. Like he has the full spectrum of what love is, how to express it, what works, what doesn't, in his hand patterns. It's kind of amazing. And he has it marked more tangibly. And I have this as well, but his is marked more specifically and more tangibly in ways like, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But when I said that to you, what came up for you?
Well, when you first said it, there was, all the levels, right? So my heart and soul smiled because of recognition. Being a mature adult, I know that to be true. It's part of my life path, and it's how I express myself. Memories of being in certain circumstances. years ago, as I mentioned to you before, right? So teaching at an event, and at the end, people would share their experience of you. And before I recognized this within my own self, meaning before I acknowledged it, I should say, hearing so many people around the room um, who had different experiences of me, yet it was oh, there's the guy with the big heart. There was the guy with and so that was the theme that kept popping as feedback to me. And so when that first happened many, many, many years ago, that was like, whoa. So that was interesting because I wasn't seeing myself that way. Yeah. And so, but over the decades of doing work, I get to embrace that and say, yes.
Okay, good. See, and so it resonated.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my points about this is I'm not going to tell anybody anything they don't already know. I'm providing language, which has happened in our sessions. You've often said, thank you for putting words to that, because I know what you're talking about, but I didn't have the language for it. So I do that a lot, is I provide language and images, clarity, permission. That's the biggest thing my clients have told me over the years, is that I provide permission. I have a nickname of the Empress of Permission.
Sweet.
From one of my other hand analyst friends, because I do a lot of permission giving in seeing people. I see people like you do, reading their body, right?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it would be fascinating for us to look at one person, and I'm looking at their hands, you're reading their body.
I see that. I see that playing out here pretty soon, for sure. Yeah.
And just how
and that was just like you were sharing. That's another thing for me that was really parallel interesting, which is how you do your work in this, and also in the sense that your gift is to be able to take what's there and translate it, right? In the same way, right? So that's why there was this next level of rapport between my work and your work, which is I run my hands over somebody and all of a sudden, whoom, I get this, and then I am able to translate for them. There are the messages of their own system that they're not able to translate yet, right?
Yes.
Right. And that's the gift that comes back to, right? Just like when I share with somebody, they're like, well, how did you know that? I'm like, well, it's all in your body, right?
It's all right there.
It's all right there. Yeah. I just happen to be able to read it and put the words to it so it makes sense to you. Yeah.
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 So one of the things, there's three parts of the hands. One is fingerprints, one is the line formations, and one's the hand shape. So I'm looking at all of those. The fingerprints, which are formed 16 weeks after conception and never change, are soul contract. They identify your life purpose, your life lesson, and your life school. So they're soul agreements that you have made before you were born. The soul knows when it chooses the body what fingerprints it has. So it's living the life purpose and life lesson, and has a specific reason for incarnating into that body. The line formations are based on your thought processes, and they can change. They don't have to, but they can. They can come and go. They can change direction. They can change length. They can change. And then the hand shape also can change. And the hand shape tells me like an overarching perspective of your reality, how you're approaching things. And it's based on the elements, air, earth, fire, and water, and all of those mean something, and they mean the same thing in other systems, and all of that is part of, and most people have a combination of at least two elements in there. In their hand shape, they also most commonly have at least two different fingerprint types. There are 4 major fingerprint types, and then there are combinations of fingerprints. And so most people have at least 2. And Lou, like that, has whorls and loops. He's got 2 different fingerprint patterns that sit in different places in his hands. So when I identified his life purpose, which is, we're going to talk a little bit about that right now. He has both of his index fingers, which some people call pointer fingers, and some people call it your first finger. In hand analysis, it's called the Jupiter finger. It's based on the mythology of Jupiter and Zeus in Greek mythology. He has both of those fingers, left and right hands, marked as his life purpose, and those are his only 2 life purpose fingers. Some people have 10 fingers identified in with the same kind of fingerprint pattern. Some people have 1, some people have anything in between. So to have 2 on the same finger is not all that common, but much easier than having, 3 or 4 different fingers that each have its own highest ranked fingerprint to identify life purpose. So it creates a simpler conversation, but sometimes harder to live. So Lou's life purpose on his right Jupiter finger, his right index finger, is to be a leader, to be in power, to be a visionary, and to be influential, and to manage his realm. And on his left hand is living his passions and being in his personal power and being an advocate. So let's take a moment, Lou, and talk about your right Jupiter finger and talk about your relationship with leadership. How do you see yourself as a leader? How would you identify yourself as that?
Yeah. So again, in the spectrum of my time frame in this life, right? Early on, I would never even that term would never come to me in the sense of part of my identity. However, it was always part of my expression or experience, right? So whatever that was in a classroom or especially on the sporting field, I was just showing up as me. But the next thing that I know, I'm being elected captain like by my teammates. Or if it's in this scenario, then elected as the person to go do the speaking, right? Let Lou do it. So I ended up being in positions that I never really allied for, or politicized for. Like, please vote for me. Yet I found myself there. So it was an innate draw for sure. And then as I matured and developed and embraced my path of being of service, then of course it became a clear expression of who I am.
Right. And so one of the things I say to people who have this marking is be very conscious about what groups you join, because you're going to end up being a leader.
Right. You 100%. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, be careful what you say yes to, because you're soon going to be at the top running around. Yeah.
And some of it is because you're designed for it, right? It's organic. People see it in you. People can feel it in you. They just know that this is true. And the other part of it is you just get upset and frustrated with people who are sucky at leadership and want to take over because you can do it better. So I've got Jupiter markings so I totally understand. I always end up as a leader in a group that I'm in and have to be very careful of not overstepping, which is one of the things we talked about when we were in LA. I'm going to share a quick story about that, but is not overstepping the leader, because it's so easy and organic to do that when you can see where they could be doing better and doing it right according to my standards. So when I first met Lou, he was sitting next to me in not the first when met, but when we started meeting in our circle, he was sitting next to me and I could feel, I'm really psychic, so I could feel that he had a lot of wisdom, and he'd kind of share it quietly. And he wasn't really saying it out loud. So during the first break, I went up to him and I didn't know anything about him at all. I went up to the first break and I said, I feel kind of like a motherly protectiveness of you about you sharing your wisdom with the group. And I know you're not asking, but is there anything I can do to support you to speak up more? I had no idea how prolific Lou is with his voice. And so I just laughed later when I went to his website and saw that, because it never showed up in the group. I never really saw that part of you in the group because it wasn't your group. And for that reason, you were being conscious and respectful, which is a Jupiter word, of the leadership and not wanting to take over, even though there were probably plenty of things to say. I had to do the same thing. So,
and this is a really great, I appreciate you sharing that story, especially for the listening audience, because this is a really cool gift when Pam, reads your map and gives you feedback around the information, especially if you haven't mastered the process. And at one point, since I've said that out loud, if you would describe the difference, which you're probably already going to do that, between how it shows up if we're in the student path versus the math path, right? So for instance, if I had not done enough work on myself and I was in this room and I showed up with my just innate, authentic expression, then I would have been driving the room, which would have been really disrespectful to the person who put the event on. and on all kinds of levels, right? Including some of the people might have resonated with what I was saying. Some would have been like, oh my God, that guy's errant. He's trying to take over the room. I'm just being me, right? It's not an intentional to be an ass. It's just, right? It's just this, it shows up. Since I'm aware of that, then it's learning how to interact in the room where I can still be present, still share my truth, yet without doing just that, without taking over the room. And so that's why when Pam met me, because I wasn't really speaking, I was just kind of being present, holding space in the room, yada, yada, yada. So when she came up and break, she's like, I really support you to start like, claiming your voice. And I'm laughing inside. I'm like, most people tell me to shut the F up, right? Like, dude, would you just shut up? We know you have an opinion, right? Keep it to yourself for a little while. So it was really funny to hear somebody say that to me, but I got it because at that point I was only energetically expressing and I wasn't verbally putting into the room.
And I could feel the energy.
Yeah, 100%, right? And so Pam's very intuitive and she's like, hey, it seems like you've got a lot to share. Why don't you do so, right? And so that started part of our conversation. So back to the listening audience. Here's the gift is, let's say you just are still running into something like that, right? Like you keep bumping into that, wondering why, like you're not embraced in the room, right? Or people are judging you as being arrogant. Well, maybe because you're still not balancing out the power that you showed up in this world with.
Yeah, you just haven't looked at it. Maybe you didn't even have it identified.
Right.
Right. Like if you haven't had mentors who have been able to provide insight and language for you, you may not even be aware of it, which is, I see this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Lou brought up the master path and student path. Every marking in the hand has a master path and student path. And so the master path that we were talking around leadership is owning, oh, yes, I am a leader. Yes, I step into my leadership. Most of the people that I read for who have right Jupiter as a life purpose deny their leadership or stand back from it because their image of power, which is another part of this, is so distorted from the media, and they don't want to be like that. So they back off instead of coming up with their own definition of power, which he and I did in our most recent conversation about his hand. So, but the student path for right Jupiter is feeling powerless, which I'm sure you've been through at different times, or giving your power away, or giving it away or diminishing it in order to be loved, because you're in the school of love with the rest of his fingerprints. And so this is a huge deal for Lou, is being loved, right? For you to be loved. And you might have diminished your power at times in order to be loved. And of course, it doesn't work. It's a student path, which is where resistance is and where things are not in flow. But the master path is where things are in flow and they're pretty easy and they move forward. That's how I talk about it.
Yeah, so 100% on that perspective, right? So listening audience. So when I was expressing this part of my life, but in the student path, then I was doing just that, which was overcompensating to be accepted, right? To be liked. And so I would, oh my goodness, right? I didn't know how to say the word no. Right? It was always yes, because one, I loved giving and being of service, but it was also overcompensating to make sure that I, oh my gosh, to not be rejected, right? To not, gotta fit in and blah, blah, blah. And that was the early part of my life for sure. And then over time, not realizing it, but continually doing that, now I'm resenting the people that I'm the one doing all this for, because I was still in student path and victim mode, right? So not until I finally started doing deeper work that I realized that doesn't work anymore, right? So what's a better way to do that? Well, when you feel that's the only way, then that's what seems like that's what you got to keep doing. And of course it's not, right? There's another reality.
You don't have the education to know differently,
right? Yeah, right. We don't know what we don't know. And since this is the only tool at the moment, then use it, right? Until it no longer works anymore. And then you go, hey, this isn't right. This isn't working for me anymore. And I support everybody that's listening. Listen quicker than I did, right? Right? Because
start sooner.
Yeah. Listen a little more subtly. Don't wait for the people like, oh, I had a 2x4. I'm like, that's a toothpick, right? When you resist, you can get you can get bigger items to smack you upside the head.
Right. So the left, because you brought up the word victim, the left Jupiter finger, the left index finger, life lesson, the student path is victimization, shame, and numbing out. Feeling victimized, not liking that feeling shame about being victimized, and numbing out so you don't have to feel any of it. That's the student path of the left Jupiter. So we know you've been there. So I'm going to move on to a couple other markings in your hands. So the heart line, which is also called the love line, which is a line that's closest to the fingers, and it starts underneath your pinky finger and it goes across the hand, maybe to the middle finger or maybe all the way over to the index finger. In Lou's case, it goes over to the index finger. So it's called a big heart. And he brought that language up earlier that people were telling him this and giving him feedback. You have such a big heart. And it's actually marked in his hands with the word big heart line. So it is about focusing on other people's needs emotionally. First, the heart line is about how you feel and your style of feeling expression. The first book I wrote on hands was on the heart line and the hands, because I thought if everybody read this book, they would understand their partners more and the divorce rate would go down. That was like what my vision was for writing this book. And it's really good. It's really a good book. And I revised it in 2017. I did some updates to it and published with a new cover, but and it's on my website. So if anybody's interested, but the big heart is like one of the rules in hands is the longer it is, the more time you spend in it. And this is the longest heart line. So Lou spends a lot of time in his feeling and in his heart. And he needs to express, because it curves and goes up and touches the index finger, it's expressive. So he needs to express how he feels. And if any of you ever listen to this podcast, you may be aware that he has very strong feelings about things that he expresses. And so that is also, it sits under the Jupiter finger. So it's another Jupiter power marking. It's another, being in connection with the Jupiter energy, which is the realm of power in the hands. So that's really prolific and profound that you have that as your heart line, right? So it just adds, it's another way that love gets expressed. Another reason I put him in this person who has this full spectrum of love. Jupiter is about power, right? We were talking about that a little bit. And power, the most powerful energy on the planet is love. So his life purpose is all about love and the power of love. His heart lines are the most expressive in terms of love, has the most energy, the most length in the love thing. And then he has fingerprints in his Venus zone, which is right next to the thumb, the section, the kind of fleshy part next to the thumb. That is the goddess of love. And hardly anybody has fingerprints in that zone. So to have fingerprints in that zone is a big deal. And that was like kind of over the top. Okay, we can't ignore the love thing. And this is the whole sexual, sensual, motherly, like Venus is the goddess of love, like all kinds of love, right? So this is another part of his soul agreement because they're fingerprints. And then he's in the school of love in his fingerprints, the ones that are on his life purpose. The other 8 fingers on his, the other 8 fingers are all loops, which puts him in the school of love. And then he has more loops in his palm. So he's like over the top school of love. So and that's about self-love and about being vulnerable and about being authentic and desiring connection, deep connection with people. So he has this full spectrum of exploring and expressing love. And so I call him the love bunny. That's my nickname for him because he's got all this energy around love. And he also has, to back up the fingerprints in the Venus zone, he's got gift markings in the Venus zone in case we missed the fingerprints, just to make sure.
Just. And so again, for the listening audience, this confirmation, I wish I'd have met Pamelah years ago, because having this information would have really changed a lot of things for me. One, everybody listen, the adage that we look through rose-colored glasses or whatever color, meaning we look through life through our own filter. We don't see the way life is. We see life the way we are, right? Always. And not going too deep down the rabbit hole about actuality and perception. I'm talking about just basically. So for me, well, then my perception was everybody functions this way, right? Meaning everybody feels like this and everybody has. So when I bump into people, which a lot of them didn't, I couldn't comprehend it. I'm like, what? Right. And I'm just fully touchy feely, right? Because it's that whole sensual, honoring sensual, right? Just this place of, because I'm empathic and I feel everything. So back to the filter of, well, everybody does, right? So then my communication would be in that same plane. And that's not there, right? So even when I started my practice 30 years ago, I remember early days where somebody would come in and sit down and I'm having these conversations, speaking from that place and using those words. And then one day, one guy, he just looks at me and goes, look, my wife's told me to come here and I'm here, but I'm not one of these touchy-feely kind of people. So can you just give it to me a little more straight, right? Because he's a numbers guy, right? I'm like, oh, like it really didn't dawn on me. So anyways, so this having confirmation and as Pamelah was expressing, right? And it was great information to me as well. So like embryologically, meaning when you're born, your fingerprints lock in at 16 weeks, as she's already said. That's your soul contract. Like that's what you agreed to do when you came here. So one, to make sure that you're in alignment to what you're up to is really important. You might be up, your ladder might be on the wrong wall or the wrong tree, right? So it's really great to get confirmation that indeed what you're committing to is part of your innate rhythm, right? Like why you signed up to be here. So having confirmation that is really nice. And then to back that up with the other aspects of who you are, what your domain is, right, outside of your soul contract. But yeah, so to get confirmation and clarity about why you're here and what capacities you had to share, that is really nice.
It is, and isn't it wonderful to be seen? Isn't that like so satisfying?
Yeah, so many years ago, like when I had my first quote unquote reading, right, by a psychic, this really intuitive person. And the first time they started reading, like, so I'd never done this before. And, hearing all sides of the story, like it's BS, it's that, it's this, whatever. And I'm sitting down and this person starts laying stuff out that nobody else on the planet would know, but me, right? None. I'm like, okay, there's something going on here because no one knows this, right? So how could you? So then I knew there was truth here. Like they were tapping into something, right? A field, information, whatever. And then as that session continued, to that word, we use it too often, but really listen to it. Like, first of all, I've met people who've never been seen yet, right? I mean, they've been on the planet and they don't know what it feels like to be seen. And that's sad. And so for those who know what Pam and I were talking about, when you have been seen, right, that's a whole different experience. And so when somebody can see you, like Pamelah can, right, when she can see you, what your whole system says is, finally, right?
Yes, finally.
Yeah, and that's not like it's not looking at you, right? That's not what we're talking about. Yeah, it's like looking into you, not looking at you.
Into you. Yeah. Yes, good distinction. Yeah, I remember the first weekend when I was learning how to read hands in February of 1991 in my living room in San Jose. My teacher, during one of the breaks, looked at my hand and said, my index finger is longer than my middle finger, which on my left hand, which hardly ever happens. And he called me the Empress and he said, the Queen Bees report to you. And I said, finally, somebody gets it. So that's how I got the nickname Empress. That was almost 32 years ago. But I totally resonated with it being true because, and I stepped into the ownership of it because now I had language for it and I had an image and which is what I do when I'm reading for people, right? I'm giving you the images and the language which is what's happened for you, right? Just in the last few weeks, the things that you've taken ownership of internally because we've had the conversation about it.
Yeah, and again, for listening audience, there's the difference. So for me, when I use the word confirmation, like like in this case, when Pam does her work, which you will, I'm guessing she'll describe, literally taking images of your hand, and then she does the discernment and information gathering of what's there. And then she shares it with you, right? She'll actually, here's part of the call and get down and points it out. This is that and this and that and this and that. So you're now seeing real practical confirmation, right? This isn't foo-foo stuff. It's in your script right there in your palm of your hand. We see them as squiggles and lines on our hand. Like that's it, right? Like lines on your face. Oh, I'm getting old, right? No, there's information in there. And so when you have a master at their craft like Pamelah is, who can take and read that and then connect it to your life and your life path, especially now, if you're on it, it creates confirmation. If you're not there yet to hear it, then there's this call that pulls you towards it. At least that's my experience. And that place of when there's potential doubt in the mind, like, am I just making this crap up? Right. Versus like when Pamelah's teacher said, okay, you're the Empress, right? That gave her words about what she was already experiencing in her life. Therefore, the ability to embrace that versus this potential ego story that I'm creating, like everybody should, right? Like, whoa, sit down.
Right. Yeah. And here's my experience after reading 50,000 Hands. Everybody's doing something towards their life purpose, and they're intimately familiar with their life lesson. They really know their life lesson. The life lesson is where the lowest ranked fingerprints are. That's how it gets identified in the ranking system. But it is also where most people tend to, quote, struggle, and life feels hard and sucky. And the purpose of the life lesson is that it's the way through. I woke up one morning when I was living in LA, and my guides said to me, the life lesson is the way through. I was like, okay, they give me a lot of one-liners. I got a lot of one-liners in my guide. And then a few months later, they said, your life lesson is your life's purpose, meaning the master path of your life lesson is what's going to make your life work. So get educated about it, get language for it, get insights, get pictures, get support, because that's how your life moves forward, is to pay attention and that. So I'll use my hands as an example of that. My life lesson, and I only have one, some people have many, is my right ring finger, my right Apollo finger. And when I'm in the sucky part of it, I'm self-rejecting, I'm being mean to myself in my mind chatter, I'm being self-critical, and there's huge intimacy barrier, and there's no space for anybody to connect with me because I'm being so hard on myself, and I just attract. What's that? Law of attraction, right? When I'm on the master path of it, I'm an artist, because the life purpose on right Apollo is to be an artist, to be in the spotlight, to be creatively expressive, to be visible is my creativity. If you came to my house, you'd see it's an art gallery. I have art everywhere. I do art all the time. I make cards. I do all kinds of things. I have all kinds of art expression. But the visibility with it is a different aspect of it. So I'm doing the art, and I'm not self-rejecting and self-criticizing like I used to, because I became conscious. I'm aware that when I'm in that thing, what I need to do is reach out to a friend. I'm in a self-critical place. I need someone to help me get back on track. That's what works for me. That's what I need, because I also am in the school of love, and connection and relationships are everything. So I create, I've created relationships. I need freaking out. I need help, right? So I have people that I can call and have conversations with. And sometimes it's with my guidance if it's like the middle of the night and I don't really want to call somebody. So anyway, my point is, I've learned, because I've been doing this for so long, what to pay attention to and what to notice about my behavior when I'm in the student path, and when I'm in my life lesson, and how it prevents me from moving forward with my life purpose, which is to be an innovative, making stuff up. My left ring finger has a fingerprint down in the palm, actually. And also my other life purpose is in my moon zone. Lou also has a fingerprint down here, which has to do with being highly intuitive and also helping people who are in some kind of identity change, who are in some kind of transformation in their identity. What's next? My life is changing, and I've moved. I was telling Lou that recently, I've moved 27 times in my life. I've moved to new communities where I knew nobody, right? So I was kind of in an identity change. Sometimes it felt like a crisis, and sometimes it was a freedom, right? And so I help people with different identity changes because I've been through a lot of them, and I also use my intuition to help people move through whatever is up. So Lou is kind of in a like, okay, what's next in my business conversation, like anybody who's in business runs into this on a regular basis. And so part of what I'm helping him with is provide some insight, some language, some support about who he is and who his audience is. Because your hands, if you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, your hands tell you who your audience is. I can tell you who your tribe is and how you want to communicate with them based on what's in your hands. And so this is one of the things that I do. And I've been doing that with Lou.
Yeah, and that right there is a enormous gift, is to get clear on, especially as Pamelah was talking about, when you're in transition, meaning, there is another reinvention of self and how you're expressing in your vocation, your career, whatever you call it, how you're dancing around. And as I keep growing and evolving, there is a next place of like, who am I designed to be serving now? Because it's different. When 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I would not be able to serve the people that I serve now. And now I would not be able to take care of the people that I took care of 30 years ago. We're not a match. There's nothing I could be of service to. It would cause all kinds of distortion if I attempted to do that now. And so to be clear on who is ready for the work that I deliver is critical for all people involved, right? So it's a win-win. And that's the same true for you. Like wherever you're at in your path, however you're showing up, especially in a business model, who are the ideal people that you're designed to serve, like in this journey right now for you. And that's a great piece of awareness to be clear.
And who you're not, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We've also talked about who is
even
not
more so, probably even more so. Yeah.
Yeah.
On how much that saves, because it saves everybody, right? So if I'm not clear, then even in my marketing and promotions or messaging, and I attract people who are close to it, but not it, then it takes a lot of time, effort, energy, and it creates frustration on both parties. Because it doesn't work out. It's not a match, right? So that's brilliant. Thank you for clarifying that. Who you're not, who you should not be working with. And remember, this isn't judgment, right or wrong. It's just matching, right? It's connection.
It's attraction.
This is a sync.
We live in an attraction-based universe.
100%.
So, yeah. And so, the alignment really matters. And there are lots of other pieces. And there's one more piece of your hands I want to talk about that the first time I looked at your hands. I was doing a survey in this group of people that were attending this event. And I was looking at everybody's hands to see, because I knew the leader intimately. He and I'd actually lived together in a house in LA for a year and a half. So I knew how he was designed, and I know what he needs in terms of his tribe. And so I was looking at everybody's hand to see how their lifeline and headline were connected. So the lifeline is the line that kind of curves around your thumb, and it starts in the middle of the hand, right by your thumb. And the headline is the horizontal line that starts about the same place and goes across the hand in the middle of the hand, right? That's the headline, how you think, how you process information and data, your mental line. And for a lot of people, 70% of the world, their headline and lifeline are the same line at the beginning, and then they split. And Lou, that's not true. His headline is separate from his lifeline. It has a little small gap, and there can be a wide gap or a little gap. And his is kind of, on the smaller side, but it's enough that I commented on this, and I remember you laughing when I said this, is that you don't think like the tribe. You don't solve problems in a tribal way. You're an independent thinker. You think independently from the tribe, which could be family of origin, church, culture, religion, whatever.
Or all
And
all of the
so
above.
all of the above, and that you come up with solutions that are ahead of their time. And one of the challenges with this headline is when you're coming up with solutions ahead of their time, people don't always know what you're talking about. So I have this whole conversation about the independent headline. I could do a whole day's workshop on this, and I probably will actually, because it impacts every single relationship in your life. Mm-hmm. And the student path side of this is feeling misunderstood, miscommunicated, feeling stupid because people don't get, or the people you're talking to feel stupid because they don't know what you're talking about, and they avoid you like the plague because they feel stupid. They don't want to hang around you because they don't want to be reminded of that, or they just look at you with glazed over eyes because what you're saying doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And there are solutions for this, but this is one of the things that I also noticed about Lou. All of my close friends have independent headlines. I don't. I have a maybe tiny little kind of like that, but I know how to translate independent headline thinkers into a language that people understand. I'm really good at taking what it is you're trying to communicate and provide a language for it, because that's one of my skill sets. And so that's what I've been doing with Lou, is giving him language and insights and tangible information about his design so he can move into what's working. But one of his requirements is people who are willing to kind of step outside the box and look at things from a different perspective. And that is a match for who Lou is, right? That's a match for your tribe.
Yeah, and again, that piece right there, as well as I wish I would have met Pamelah years ago because of everything she just described. One, feeling like an outcast because everything that I not just thought but saw, is the way it was my worldview, was quite different than everybody around me, and so it was a challenge to learn how to navigate that without tools or a mentor. And then all the different subsets of that, as she already described, like communicating in a way that totally makes sense to me, but I look at eyes just glazing over. I'm like, well, I just lost everybody. Why is that? I thought I communicated clearly, right? I did, just not in a way that was comprehensible. And then everything from on the student path, learning how to downgrade in order to communicate, but then I stopped growing.
I became frustrated.
Yeah, and that gets really frustrating, right? It's like, so all of those pieces. Anyhow, so back to that place of, it's really nice to, one, if you're aware of it, to have confirmation, and if you're not, to get clear on it. It's really profound. So you can then start enhancing the walking that path with clarity and ownership, because it is your path.
Yeah. And to help and here's the other thing about the independent headline. It's your hands. So it really falls on you to create the feedback system that's needed in order to have clear communication. You can't depend on somebody else to do that. So you have to take responsibility. Oh, this is my marking. I'm the one who has to create a feedback loop in order to get clear communication. And where is it a value? It's not a value with everybody. If you're having to work really hard at communicating with somebody, it's probably not a good match for your life, right?
Yeah, move on.
They may have a long connection between their headline and lifeline, and they can't even consider going out into the world that you live in. So I'm just saying there's so many things. There's so many things in the hand. The other thing, Lou has a lot of gift markings in his hands, as I do. Gift markings are line formations that identify extra potential talent. Lou has 7 of them. I have 13. So one of the things I tell people is, if you have a lot of gift markings, and most of my clients do, because I attract people with a lot of gift marking because they don't know where else to go to learn about themselves. Gift markings can be a lot of pressure, and there are not very many people in the world. Like, one gift marking shows up maybe 10 to 15% of the time. To have 7, you're in like the top 1-2% of the planet. I'm in way less than 1% because I have 13 of them, right? So how many people can see me and acknowledge me and support me? And so I tell people who are highly gifted, that's my language for people with 3 or more gift markings, is that you need a mentor who can see you. Don't waste your time with people who can't. It's frustrating for both people. So I'm supporting Lou because I can see him. It's such a gift, right? This is one of the benefits. I mean, he's helping me with stuff, but this is one of the benefits of my capacity to see him is I can see him because I'm designed to, right? And like I said, most of my clients have gift markings because I've written books about it. And so this is one of my areas of expertise. There isn't anybody, my opinion, on the planet who knows more about gift markings than I do. Because I've written books. You have to know a lot of stuff to write a book.
Yeah, and so again, remember when I shared in the bio that Pamela has read over 50,000 hands. And so that's a lot of exposure, a lot of experience, and a lot of digestion and assimilation of patterns. And again, she's an avid student. So, and then taking that into her years of study in psychology and mythology, and then, her deep intuition. So bringing that into a full package is where this just becomes super yummy. So, Pamelah, first of all, thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom. And I know that everybody that's listening is going, whoa, okay, how can this serve me, right? How can this serve me? So how can this, I know you have a gift for them, right? So how can they enter your world?
Okay, so I have a website, surprise, PamelahLanders.com, and Pamelah has an H in it, so it's Pamelah Landers.com. And I added the H for numerology reasons because I wanted an 8 numerology, and so I changed my name in 2003 and added the H. So on my website, if you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see there's a free ebook, Trusting Intuition. And you can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter almost every week with what I'm up to and insights about hands and other things in my life that are important. And so it's a lot of personal stories as well as insights about things that could be supportive for you. So it's not just a data-driven newsletter. It's got a lot of personal stuff. So you can learn how to trust me because I share my stuff that doesn't work well as what is working well. And then also on my website, I have a shop tab where all my books and audios and art. I'm also an artist, so I have a tab for my art on my website. So that's how you can get connected. And I also have under the programs tab, different kinds of hand analysis sessions that I provide. And so you can look through those as well and see what's a match for you.
Yeah, and so please in the show notes, right? So that's verbally, it's Pamelah Landers, LANDERS.com, and Pamelah with an H. And in the show notes, there'll be a hyperlink. So we're just giving the verbal for those that are just listening. And gift yourself, like step into Pamelah's world and watch what she can bring to yours through this beautiful scientific analysis of your map, right? Because it is encoded in your system, right? It's right there. We just weren't taught how to read it, but she is, right? So let her show you that process. And also in that process, just so you know, is she doesn't just like take the information and then download it to you. She actually shows you the process, right? So like, here is your hand, right? Here's your lines, here's your prints. So she's pointing out what's going on, right? So it's not just secretive that she keeps, right? She's going to show you exactly what's up and why that's there and what that means and how that plays out in your life. And what you can do about it, right? And then where you're at in the path, the student or master path with it. Yeah.
It feels appropriate to share technology a little bit. I do most of my readings on Zoom. So I can get digital photos of your palms and your fingerprints. Or send you a hand printing kit. Or if I meet you in person, I can print your hands, which is what I did with Lou. So I do read. I have clients all over the world. I can read for anybody as long as we can find a time that works. It's so, but the technology is digital photos in this day and age, right? Of being able to send, and that may take a few back and forth emails. I need, a better shot of this part of your hand, or this part's in shadow, or this one, I can't see it because there's too much glare. And I have instructions on how to take digital photos because I've had to do that so much. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah. And then when we get on Zoom, I'm sharing the screen with your hands and drawing stuff and making comments about what it is and putting text if I need to. And yeah.
Yeah. So once again, Pamelah, thank you so much for taking your time out of your flow with your students and clients in order to enlighten me some more in our journey, and also for the listening audience. So I appreciate you greatly.
Thank you.
And listening audience, please go to Pamelah's site and check her out and see what resonates for you. And both of us would love to hear what works. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So until next time,
you.
abundant blessings. Ciao. Thank you for tuning in to the Tao Living Podcast, The Art of Living. Now go to loucorletto.com, LOUCORLETO.com, to receive your free training, The Operator's Manual for your vehicle. See, when you buy a phone, you get a manual. When you buy a car, you get a manual. When you entered your body, no manual. Let me teach you how it's really designed to work. Also, help me help others and share this podcast far and wide. And subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, abundant blessings.